What's up, guys? It's Proud T-Boy, and we are at the place where the Civil War ended, and we're gonna explore around and just look around. Like yesterday, we were at Monticello, and here's a fun fact: Thomas Jefferson had 600 slaves in his lifetime. He had 400, I think. I forgot what it was. When did he have 400 slaves once? But it was super cool. We saw his burial site at his house. So you're going to be seeing stuff here, so it's time for now.
No, to help preserve the meat. Do you know why they wrapped it?
Well, let me tell you something. It ain't the best, man. Oh, it ain't.
requesting money for his autograph. That's what I was wondering about.
Oh, I'm not sure.
So, well, I just bring it to your attention in case he goes back to doing that. But and how can I help you?
Well, you see, we have some visitors through the village, and perhaps visiting the plains as well. And
Right.
I was wondering if you're not too busy, would you mind sharing perhaps where you've been on your travels, what you've seen in Virginia and elsewhere? These folks are right curious.
The curiosity seekers.
They
You think
are.
they want to know more about what happened? Well, back at the surrender too. Do you think that's
I
something they
believe
want to know
so.
about? All right.
Yes, sir.
Well, I could tell them about it if you'd like.
Sure.
All right.
Well,
I'm happy to
if I
oblige.
could leave these folks in your hands, I'd
All right.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That clerk, he has to hurry back to the courthouse. But Mr. Pierce is the clerk. He's a hard man. I don't even know that it's open now, but he has to go back anyway. So you folks are curiosity seekers, is that right? That's my understanding. I'm going to ask. I don't mean to make any of you feel uncomfortable by doing so, but could I ask where you're from? Are you from the village here? I don't recognize you. from
Knoxville,
being a village.
Tennessee.
From where?
Knoxville, Tennessee.
All right. Say, whenever we talk to Tennessee folks or Maryland folks, you're never quite sure. All right. So which way the leanings are. And so are you from Tennessee as well then, sir?
From Kansas.
Oh, Kansas. So we'll talk about the bloodiness of the past 4 years, but of course yours extends beyond that, doesn't it?
That's where it all started.
Back in the 1800s. Well, I'm sorry, sir. That's a hard place. So, well, welcome. I'm a visitor here myself, but I'll welcome you anyway.
Thank you.
So, you're welcome. You gentlemen, where are you from then?
South Carolina.
I'm sorry. All right, I'm going to move over here. Well, I don't mean to. Are you from South Carolina as well? No, they are. All right. Well, of course, the reason why I say that is if you were to talk to folks from around here or nearby, and they say, well, why exactly did this or how did this war start? Well, I suppose we could look back and say, well, it really started in Kansas and kind of bled its way, in some ways literally so, to the east. But folks around here will say, well, it's because of those hot-blooded South Carolinians. Am I right? Now, I don't mean to say anything disparaging by saying that you're hot-spirited, but you are. They say about South Carolina, it's too small to be its own nation, too big to be an insane asylum. I mean no offense in saying so. But now that I've offended you, I'm going to move on. You, sir, where are you also from South Carolina? Have I offended you as well?
I'm from the original capital of the Confederacy.
Oh, is that right? Deep South. Are you not? All right. Well, you're traveling about all over the place. Are you not? All right. Well, welcome to you. Well, those boys were here as well. So, and you?
California.
You are from California. All right. Well, now let me ask you about that. All right. Now I want to know what happened back in April. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Well, I'll tell you it this way. I know what you think about newspapers. I know what you think about newspaper reporters. I'm sure we'd all agree that if it's in the newspaper, well, it must be true. I assume we all agree. And we also would agree that every newspaper man only tells the truth. I can see some nods of assent, although there's some questioning looks as well that I'm receiving. Well, I'll tell you this. I am that kind of man. When I was sent down here by E.L. Gotkin, that's my editor, he said, Dennett, don't put yourself in any of the stories. You listen to folks, you tell them, you listen to what they have to say, and you tell your stories unvarnished truth, and you'll get the unvarnished truth here today. But I'm going to tell you this right now, that if you read the stories about the surrender, such as I read them back in April, I don't think they were that accurate. And here's what I mean by that. If you were to read these stories, you'd say, well, it's as if it was a foregone conclusion that Robert E. Lee and the Army of Northern Virginia, that they'd surrendered shortly after they left the line at Petersburg. And that's just not true. Get that out of your minds right now. Because here's the truth of what happened. It was April 2nd that those boys, Army of Northern Virginia, left those lines. They were in trenches, 9 months. Trenches buried into the ground, all right? 9 months. There were 60,000 that left there. Week later, they got here, and there were 30,000. 60,000 to 30,000 in 1 week. And I suppose that's why people assume, well, that army, well, it didn't have long to live. But that's not right. When they got up, and you talk to any Johnny, he'll tell you this. When they got up from those lines, those trenches at Petersburg, they were happy to do so. Because this is the Army of Northern Virginia, the great Army of Northern Virginia. And they're under Robert E. Lee himself. And instead of in trenches, they're now out in the open, doing what they were made to do. They expected to succeed. They knew they would succeed because they had Bobby Lee with them. And so they marched. But here's the problem. This is what I'd say is, if I were writing the story of what happened, and I didn't, if I were writing the story of what happened, I would have written it more along these lines. That Lee surrendered because of too little and because of too much. And it's simple things that matter. All right. They left those lines at Petersburg on April 2nd. They expected to go to Amelia, which isn't but so far from here, more toward the east. And they expect to be resupplied. There's a station there. One clerk's error meant that munitions was sent to Amelia instead of the food that they so desperately needed. Those boys were starving when they left Petersburg. Matter of fact, a number of them will tell you that of the boys who deserted during those 9 months, just comes the wafting of the smell of the bakery behind Union lines. It drove them to a kind of madness, and they would desert. So they were already starving when they left. They go to Amelia, they open up those rail cars, oh my, ammunition, which is exactly what they did not need. They needed food, and they got none. So they had too little food, they had too little rest. 3 nights they marched, because when they got to Amelia, and Robert E. Lee, he says, well, we have no food here, but an army, well, some of you folks probably are military men would know this. There's a tyrant, Napoleon. Do you recall what he said? What does an army march on? Anyone ever hear this before? Stomach. And he's a tyrant. He was a tyrant. But I suppose he was right. Just like an army marches on its stomach. They had nothing to march on. Bobby Lee says, go about in the countryside, get food. They get none. They lose the 1-day advantage that they have over Grant and his boys. 3-night marches. So they're exhausted. Too little rest, too little food. And then what was too much of? Someday, these boys are going to write a book about this war. And they're going to be famous. Because what they're going to write about is what no one's going to write about. And now here's what I'd call this book. All right, you ready for it? I'm giving you, this is the secret to your future success. I want you to just call it Mud. Mud. And here's the reason why. You could tell a story about this war just around the effect that mud had as soldiers or armies were trying to move. And that's what happened here. Those boys were famished and they were exhausted. Now this is the Richmond-Lynchburg Stage Road. It runs right along here. You can see it going up that way. And you traversed it probably already, I assume so anyway. And it's hard packed, easy to walk upon. But can you imagine if you were exhausted and you were famished? And every step that you take, you sink into the mud, not just to your ankle, but going up near your knee. And that's step after step, mile after mile, 90 miles. By the time the boys got to around here on April 8th, well, those Johnnies, the mud had done them in, let's put it that way. And then I would just say this, what else did they have too much of? Well, that was Grant. Now, I fear I might offend someone. I certainly won't offend anyone from South Carolina, because I'm sure, or deep South. But I'd say still you grant me this, all right? The man could fight. And throughout most of the war, Army of Potomac, well, they had a number of imbeciles leading them. Let's just say it that way. We'll say maybe Burnside or Hooker or what have you. But Grant, I don't know if he was any smarter than them, but I do know this. When Bobby Lee and his boys, those 60,000, got up and started to move, Grant didn't say, oh, I'll trail on behind him at a distance. He said, I'm going to get ahead of them. And that's what happened here. I am no military man. I don't know what strategy is, but I do know this. The only reason why we are here together this day is because Grant got ahead of him here. There's nothing special about this place besides that, all right? Well, let me tell you what happened when they got here on April 8th. Before doing so, let me just divert your attention just shortly to let you know, and maybe I shouldn't let you know this, but I will anyway, that, well, I'm a man of some ill health. I'll just state it directly that way. And I have difficulty for my chest expanding. And I went to see my doctor. His name is Leslie Leroc. He's this Frenchman. He's so skinny, it takes 2 of them to make a shadow. So this Leslie Leroc, he says to me, Dennett, your problem is you have too much steam in your body, and you must find a way to release your steam. You must take the cure of moaning and groaning each day, and by moaning and groaning, you will release the steam from your eyes and from your mouth. And you'll be happy to know it's not my time of day to moan and groan. But you might be less happy to know it is my time of day to gesticulate my arms and legs, a kind of exercise, thereby releasing some of the steam. So I'll ask you to do that with me. But one of the reasons why I asked you to do it is allow me to show you something, and you travel from afar, and you might as well see it. So let's take some vigorous exercise and walk over here. All right?